Good morning. It's 6:23 in the morning. What are you doing up? Uh, you're probably watching this later, of course. It's December 29th. Happy Sunday morning. Pretty early this morning because we've got church coming up. So I'm going to knock this out before I go to church and hopefully not wake up my upstairs neighbors. It's warm out there right now. These are your temperatures compared to normal. The whole country above average right now and much above average there in the Ohio Valley and back into the southeast. And those dew points are high again. We're looking at severe weather again. Not as bad as yesterday. Unfortunately, yesterday living up to the hype. But there's a chance for some severe weather. We'll go over that here in a second. But your current temperatures, we're in the 60s in the southeast to even the 70s in Florida, and then 50s as you go all the way up into Ohio. So pretty warm. Even the northeast in the 40s. Of course, in the Rockies, it's a cold start, but compared to average, it's still warm. And temperatures in the 40s, they're down in Phoenix, for example. Hazards this morning. We already have a tornado watch, or a couple of them, from Florida Panhandle through Georgia into South Carolina and North Carolina, and already a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings ongoing this morning as well. It's fog as you head up into the northeast. It's fog from East Texas all the way to Minnesota and Wisconsin. Louisiana, U2, wind issues for the Ohio Valley in the Midwest with some wind advisories there. So be advised it's going to be windy. Meanwhile, we have winter storm warnings up for Colorado and parts of eastern New Mexico. Also, some wind issues around that. You get up into the northern plains and the northern Rockies, and it's winter storm warnings and winter storm watches. Same for the Cascades of Oregon and Washington. Still looking for flooding possibilities for Northern California, Southern Oregon with a flood warning right now. And some snow up there in the mountains of California. Wind issues also in the west. Here's your severe risk today. Shifting further east, and again, we already have tornado watches in this area. So your slight risk goes from the Florida Panhandle all the way up into Virginia. Slight chance of tornadoes here too. In the brown, that's your 5% risk. In the green, a 2% risk, and that's going to include places like Columbus, Ohio, up to Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and into West Virginia. With those storms comes heavy rain as well. Could see a couple inches in the next, today and tomorrow. So Alabama through Georgia, up into the Carolinas and Virginia, and the mountains in particular, could see up to 3 inches of rain in these areas. 1.5 to 2 from Illinois through Ohio up into parts of Michigan. West Coast, heavy rain along the Oregon coast, Northern California coast, heavy snow in the mountains. So the next 2 days of snow, there's your smiley face, Idaho. But heavy snow in the mountains there, also into Wyoming and Montana, and then the Cascades of Oregon and Washington, even the mountains of Utah into Colorado could see up to a couple feet of snow here. And then you get in the plains, Montana into South Dakota, Wyoming, even a little bit of Nebraska, parts of Iowa. Could see a little bit of snow in the next couple of days. The cold air is coming. It's going to be winter. Now we can jump ahead to the 9th. So these are the low temperatures the morning of January 9th. This is the GFS ensemble with freezing temperatures to the Gulf Coast, single digits Iowa, below zero further to the north. The Canadian is much colder than that. We're talking 28 for San Antonio, and 20s into the Florida Panhandle, and temperatures below zero for Iowa, and colder than that further north. That's the Canadian. The European kind of splits the difference. This is the morning of the 9th, but still cold air all the way down to the Gulf. 32 degrees there in the middle of Louisiana, for example, 27 for Jackson, but the Canadian has 20 in Jackson. So quite a difference, and we're still, a week and a half away. Meanwhile, the morning of the 10th, the GFS has 20s all the way into almost southern Alabama. But you go to the Canadian, And those 20s go all the way down into Orlando, Florida. And that's going to be bad news for the orange crop if this comes true. Low 20s in West Texas, teens all the way into Eastern Oregon, according to the Canadian, even 39 for like Brownsville, Texas. The European, again, splits the difference. This is the ensemble, but still 20s into the Florida Panhandle. So cold air is coming, and even a slight risk now, according to the risk of hazardous temperatures, January 4th through 10th. Slight risk 5th through the 10th from the northern plains through the Midwest, down in even into Kentucky. Some pretty cold wind chills here, and a slight risk for Florida, 4th and 5th and 9th and 10th. Could be falling iguanas for parts of Florida as we get into January. Heavy snowfall possibility too. We showed you this map yesterday, and so we could see some heavy snowfall from the northern plains through the plains into the Midwest and then eventually into the Northeast. All right, back to today's forecast. There's your severe weather possibilities: Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, with thunderstorms around that. And as we saw, possibly severe weather too up in Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Freezing rain possibly there in northern Maine. In the west, it's heavy snow in the mountains. Heavy rain, Oregon, California coast, even parts of the foothills there in the Sierra Nevada. And then rain or snow depending on location and elevation. Tomorrow, we get rid of the severe weather, but we add a critical fire weather possible. So high fire danger, eastern New Mexico into West Texas, parts of the Oklahoma Panhandle. Up in the west, still hanging on to some heavy snow, Idaho, Montana, Washington, and Wyoming too in places. And then rain or snow depending. And then there's your mixture for Iowa into Nebraska and South Dakota, which I think that will change over to snow for most of us. Then on Tuesday, lighter amounts of snow and mixture in the west and into the northern Rockies. And then we see a mixture of rain and snow depending through the Midwest, Ohio Valley, up into the Northeast, and then down into the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. Let's check it out on the GFS model today. A couple things to watch for. This low, of course, bringing warm temperatures, rain, all the way to the East Coast. But we're going to watch another system here for a chance of some rain changing to snow in western Iowa for New Year's Eve. And then on the 5th, looks like a good snowstorm before church. So we'll see. All right, going through the day today, that's noon. This is afternoon. We see our severe weather here moving eastward into the Carolinas. We see some good thunderstorms, even though in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, scattered light snows across the northern plains. And as this low exits, maybe a mixture in Michigan and some heavier rain all the way up into Canada. It's kind of crazy as those thunderstorms rumble across Connecticut and Massachusetts. Meanwhile, this gets us into tomorrow. We're starting to see our snow in South Dakota into western Nebraska. And as that low gets its act together here, we're going to see, looks like starting out as rain around Omaha, but mixing in with some of those snowflakes, northern Iowa. So northern Nebraska into South Dakota. This is Monday the 30th, tomorrow evening. And as we get further into the evening, we see rain and snow mix around Omaha, rain in southwestern Iowa, but mixing in with snow and changing to snow as you head north. And as we get later into the evening, we're seeing that transition to rain and snow to snow. And I think even according to the European, we could end up with snow where I live here in western Iowa. This is early Tuesday morning, 3 a.m. This is 6 a.m., some light snow across most of Iowa. So our official forecast says less than a half inch, which that may be right. We'll find out. And some rain here with that. Then as we go through time, that system continues off to the east. Some rain and snow mix as we get into the Midwest. And then kind of a mess here by Wednesday morning up into the Northeast with some ice and some snow and some rain and some thunderstorms. On the backside, though, we're seeing that cold air coming south as This is January 1st, 6 o'clock in the morning, Central Time. We're not going to be above freezing here in western Iowa for probably 2 weeks. Meanwhile, some rain and snow in the northwest. As we get further into January 1st, we see that snow spreading, even lower elevations, I think, for Idaho. And the rain of mixed rain or snow, depending, in the northwest. Snow now for the northeast, and the wind picking up as that cold air heads south and east. Not getting all the way into the south just yet on midnight the 1st. As we get into January 2nd, we see that cold air getting down to about Tennessee, but not making a big push just yet, although it feels cold in the northeast with that wind. And then as we get into the 3rd, pretty light on the snow, West Virginia. The Dakotas, another system moving in the Pacific Northwest, heavy rain along the coast of Oregon and Northern California. Heavy snows for the Washington Cascades. That system continues to move in. Lots of snow here for the Northern Rockies and a kind of a mix trailing down into Nevada. The coldest air, basically Northern Plains, Midwest into the east. Some lake effect snows here. This is midnight the 3rd, going into Saturday morning, the 4th. This is a storm that I was talking about moving into the Northern Plains, and it's going to bring, and the models have been showing this off and on for a week, and they're coming into agreement with this. Most of the models have a snowstorm now for much of Iowa and Nebraska on the 5th. This is Saturday night, the 4th at midnight, and this is the 5th, 6 a.m. So snowing pretty good on top of my head, and some wind to go along with that. So, most likely be heading to church, and most likely going to get to test out my new all-wheel drive Crosstrek in some snow. So we'll see if this comes true. It's only a week away, and again, the models are coming into good agreement. So my confidence is rising on a snowstorm from Kansas into eastern Nebraska, into Iowa, and then into the Dakotas, into Minnesota. Eventually, Chicago, you're going to get some of that, northern Missouri, and very windy here too with this snow. As we go into the evening of the 5th, and then here's the 6th, that snow spreading into New England and hanging back into the Great Lakes, and very windy with that snow. And behind the low, here comes that push of cold air. And that Arctic air is going to start to really be felt across a lot of the country as that goes very far south. Then, this is getting more into uncertainty, but could it be a snowstorm for eastern New Mexico, West Texas, North Texas? Ice even getting down towards Houston. Snow in northern Louisiana, Arkansas. Snow maybe down to almost Austin. This is the 8th at noon. And so will it snow in Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, even down to almost Houston? It remains to be seen. But right now, this is what the European model is showing. And it's showing that cold air all the way through Texas down to the Gulf Coast with a snowstorm for the south, and then the mid-Atlantic, and then lifting northward to blizzard conditions in the northeast, maybe a nor'easter. So something to be aware of as we get into January. Our fortunes are definitely changing, and how it plays out exactly remains to be seen, and we'll keep you posted. So 8 to 14 day outlook, yeah, it's turning colder, eastern half of the country. The best chance of above average temperatures, hanging on to those, would be the western half of the country. And then precipitation wise, our chances of above average precipitation is going up for the northern Rockies, northern plains into the central plains, and also along the Gulf Coast into the mid-Atlantic. So there you go. Winter is coming. Exactly how that looks, we'll see how it plays out, but it looks like the potential to be very cold and very snowy. So keep it right here. We'll keep you updated. We'll see you tomorrow right here on the Weather Mic.